What if the self you defend so fiercely, the identity you carry day after day, is not who you truly are? What if the thoughts that fill your mind, the stories that weigh on your heart, the roles you play in the world, are only temporary masks, fragile and fleeting, and beneath them, something greater waits, something timeless, something that does not rise or fall with the tides of experience. I discovered this not in a temple, not on a mountaintop, but in the most unexpected place. A hospital room, a simple procedure, a moment where science silenced my thoughts and memories, leaving behind nothing but awareness itself. In that silence, I realized the me I had always protected was gone, yet something deeper remained. Presence, pure being, the silent witness that does not vanish, even when everything else disappears. This is not a story about death alone, and it is not a story about survival. It is a story about the essence of consciousness, about the awareness that shines through every experience you have ever lived and every experience you will ever lose. It is the reminder that you are more than you think, more than you fear, more than you hope. Stay with me, because what we uncover in this journey may shift the way you see yourself forever. The end of thought is not the end of you. It is the beginning of seeing what you have always been. For most of our lives, we believe we are the stories we tell ourselves. We believe we are the accumulation of memories, the patterns of thought that replay endlessly in our minds, the identities handed to us by family, by society, by circumstance. We say, I am this name, this body, this job, this history. And we spend decades defending this fragile construct. Yet, the truth is, the self we guard so carefully is not the essence of who we are. This realization came to me in a moment that was not planned, not sought after, not part of my meditation practice at all. It came in the stillness of anesthesia, when everything I thought of as me was temporarily erased. Thoughts fell silent, memories dissolved, perception disappeared. The narrative of self, the constant stream of mental activity was gone. And yet, something remained. It was not the story, not the memory, not the identity. It was presence, a pure, silent awareness, untouched by the disappearance of the self. Science explains this as a shutting down of higher cognitive functions, a suppression of the brain's ability to weave thoughts and memories into experience. But beyond the explanation, what mattered was the recognition. When the self dissolved, awareness did not. When the story went dark, presence remained. This told me something profound. The self is not the foundation of being. Awareness is. When you sit in meditation, you may notice the same truth in smaller ways. A thought comes and you notice it. The thought fades and you notice that too. An emotion arises, strong and overwhelming, but even in the midst of it, a part of you is watching, aware. That watcher, that silent noticing is awareness. It does not belong to the thought, it does not belong to the feeling, it does not belong to the self. It is the space in which all of them appear and dissolve. Think of a theater. On the stage, characters come and go. Scenes change. Some are joyful. Some are tragic. Some are filled with laughter. Others with sorrow. But the stage itself remains steady and unmoved. Awareness is the stage. Your identity, your memories, your thoughts are the characters and the scenes. They may change, they may vanish, but awareness does not. What I learned in that hospital room is what meditation had been pointing to all along. The self is not as solid as it seems. It is fragile, fleeting, impermanent. It can vanish in a moment, under sedation, under deep sleep, under the quiet of stillness. And when it vanishes, awareness remains. This awareness is not a product of the self. It is not something created by thought. It is the ground of being itself. When you begin to see this, life shifts. You no longer cling so tightly to the story of who you think you are. You no longer defend your identity with such desperation. You realize that the self, as important as it may seem, is not ultimate. Beneath it, behind it, within it, there is awareness, and that awareness is steady, eternal, unchanging. This does not mean the self is meaningless. The story has its place. Identities are useful. Roles matter. You are a parent, a child, a teacher, a friend. You have a name, a history, a culture. All of these are valuable and they shape the way you live in the world. But when you know that awareness is the ground beneath them, you are no longer imprisoned by them. You can play your roles with freedom, with lightness, knowing that they do not define you. Imagine the freedom of this. When someone criticizes you, instead of collapsing under the weight of hurt, you can remember the self they are criticizing is not the essence of who I am. When success comes, instead of clinging desperately to keep it, you can remember this too is a passing scene on the stage of awareness. When failure arrives, instead of drowning in despair, you can remember awareness is untouched. And I am that awareness. This is not just philosophy. It is practical, it is immediate, it is a way of living. Each time you pause, each time you notice the space of awareness beneath thought, you are loosening the grip of the false self. You are remembering that who you are is deeper than identity. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. I want you to try something now. Close your eyes if you can. Notice the thoughts rising in your mind. Watch them appear, watch them fade. Notice the feelings in your body, the sensations moving through you. And then ask yourself, what is it that is noticing? What is it that remains even as thoughts and feelings change? That silent presence, that steady awareness is what you are. This recognition is not something you need to achieve. It is not a prize waiting at the end of effort. It is here now, always present, always available. You cannot lose it because you are it. Even when you forget, awareness does not forget you. Even when you fall into distraction, awareness holds you. Even when the self dissolves, awareness remains. And this changes everything. Because if awareness remains even when the self is gone, then death itself may not be what we think. Perhaps death is not the end of awareness. Perhaps it is the end of the self, the end of the story, the end of the characters on the stage. But the stage itself, the awareness that holds it all, continues. This possibility does not need to be believed blindly. It can be tasted now, in every moment of presence, in every glimpse of awareness beyond thought. So let this sink in. You are not your thoughts. You are not your memories. You are not even your story. You are the awareness in which all of them appear and in which all of them pass. This is the freedom that meditation offers. This is the freedom that even a moment of anesthesia revealed. And this freedom is not distant. It is not hidden. It is here, now, waiting for you to notice. When I first read the scientific explanation of what had happened under anesthesia, I understood it with my mind, but I felt it more deeply with my heart. The words spoke of chemicals, of brain circuits, shutting down of the frontal and posterior lobes, no longer communicating as they usually do. They explained how memory is suppressed, how perception is dulled, how cognitive activity is switched off. And yet, they also admitted something remarkable. Awareness can persist. Even when the lights of thought go dark, even when the machinery of the mind grows silent, a presence remains. This struck me because it echoed what years of meditation had already revealed. Awareness is not a product of the mind. It is not created by neurons firing. It is not manufactured by thoughts weaving their endless patterns. Awareness is more fundamental. It is the space in which the brain itself appears. It is the canvas upon which all experiences are painted. And when the brushstrokes stop, when the colors fade, the canvas is still there. Science calls it conscious sedation, a state where you are not fully unconscious, yet not fully awake. A state where higher functions are quiet, but some subtle layer of awareness continues to shine. I like the phrase conscious sedation, but I love even more the word presence, because that is what it feels like. Not a thought, not a memory, not an image, but presence itself. Meditation teaches us to touch this presence deliberately, to move through the noise of the mind until only awareness remains. But what happened under sedation showed me that awareness does not depend on effort. It does not depend on skill. It does not depend on practice. It is here whether you seek it or not. It is here even when you are not looking. It is here even when the mind is switched off completely. This realization opened a door to a deeper truth. If awareness remains when the mind is silent, then perhaps it remains even beyond death. Perhaps what we call the end is only the disappearance of the story, the fading of perception, the dissolving of memory, but not the vanishing of awareness itself. If this is true, then death is not a darkness to be feared, but a revealing, a lifting of the veil, a returning to what we have always been. Think of how this changes the way we live. So much of human fear comes from clinging to identity, to thought, to memory, to the fragile self. We are terrified of losing what we believe we are. But if who we are is not the self, not the memory, not the thought, but awareness itself, then there is nothing to lose. Awareness cannot be destroyed. It does not rise with the birth of the body, and it does not fall with its death. It is eternal, it is timeless, it is the ground of being. When I sat with this truth, I began to see life differently. The struggles that seemed so heavy, the conflicts that consumed so much energy, the fears that haunted the mind, all began to soften. They were still there, but they were no longer ultimate. They were like ripples on the surface of a vast lake. Beneath them, the stillness of awareness remained. This is what non-dual teachings point to. They tell us that awareness is not personal. It is not my awareness or your awareness. It is awareness itself, infinite and unbroken. The self arises within it, the world arises within it, but awareness is untouched by what appears. And when you know yourself as this awareness, you live free. Imagine this freedom for a moment. Imagine living without the constant fear of losing yourself. Imagine moving through the world with the steady knowing that who you are cannot be harmed, cannot be diminished, cannot be erased. Imagine loving without clinging, because you know love is not bound to possession. Imagine facing pain without despair, because you know presence remains untouched. This is not fantasy, it is the reality of awareness, available in every moment. The gift of that medical procedure was not only the glimpse of presence, but the reminder that awareness is always here, waiting to be noticed. You do not have to meditate for decades to taste it, though meditation can deepen it. You do not have to wait for anesthesia to reveal it. You can notice it now, in the space between thoughts, in the silence after an exhale, in the stillness of a pause. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel the sensations in your body. Hear the sounds around you. Notice the thoughts moving through your mind. And then ask, what is it that is aware of all of this? That awareness is not the thought, not the sound, not the body. It is the presence in which they all appear. And that presence is what you are. This is the beauty of awareness. It does not need to be achieved. It does not need to be created. It does not need to be earned. It is here, always, waiting for you to remember. You may forget it 1,000 times, but awareness never forgets you. It is the silent witness that has been with you in every joy, in every sorrow, in every moment of your life. And it will be with you in your last breath, as surely as it was with you in your first. So, when science explains the mechanics of sedation, I am grateful. But when non-duality explains the essence of awareness, I am moved. Because in the end, the truth is not something you only read about. It is something you live. It is something you feel. It is something you feel. It is something you are. As I reflected more on that experience, one truth kept rising again and again. The self is not as solid as we imagine. The identity we spend a lifetime protecting is not the foundation of our being. It is fragile, it is temporary, it is a story written on water, fading even as it is told. Under sedation, it vanished completely, yet awareness remained. That was the revelation. Awareness is deeper than identity, stronger than memory, freer than the self. Think for a moment about how much of your daily life is spent defending this fragile self. You argue to prove that you are right. You work tirelessly to achieve recognition, to strengthen the image of who you believe you are. You worry about how others see you, how they speak about you, how they remember you. And beneath all of this, there is a quiet fear. The fear that the self could be lost, that your identity could dissolve, that one day you will no longer exist. But the truth is, you are not this self. You are not this story. You are the awareness in which the story appears. You are the presence that notices the rising and falling of thoughts, the coming and going of memories, the shaping and reshaping of identity. The self may change, it may vanish, it may dissolve in sleep, in anesthesia, in death, but awareness does not. And when you recognize yourself as this awareness, the fear of loss begins to loosen its grip. Imagine living from this recognition. You still have a name, you still play your roles, you still honor your responsibilities, but you no longer cling to them as if they define you. You can meet life with openness because you know that what you are cannot be diminished. You can face criticism without collapse because awareness is untouched. You can embrace joy without clinging because awareness is steady. You can meet sorrow without despair because awareness holds it all. This shift changes everything. Relationships become lighter, freer. Instead of needing others to validate your fragile self, you meet them from presence. You listen more deeply because you are not preoccupied with defending an identity. You love more purely because your love is not bound to fear. Even conflict transforms. When someone attacks your self-image, you no longer react blindly. You see the words as clouds passing through awareness, and you respond with clarity, with steadiness, with compassion. The surgeon I spoke with, the man who had faced 7 cardiac arrests and lived through months in a coma, confirmed this truth in his own way. He described how when his body was failing, when every measure of identity was slipping away, awareness continued. He did not speak of himself as an individual clinging to life. He spoke of presence, vast and open, beyond the boundaries of self. And when he returned, he lived with less fear, less clinging, more freedom. This is what the great teachers have always pointed to, that the self is a mask, a role in a play, a passing wave on the ocean of awareness. Beneath it, behind it, within it, awareness remains. And the invitation of meditation is not to destroy the self, not to abandon life, but to see clearly that the self is not ultimate. You can honor it, you can care for it, but you do not mistake it for who you truly are. Try to feel this now. Close your eyes if you wish. Notice the stream of thoughts moving through your mind. Notice how each thought says, this is me, this is mine, this is who I am. And then notice how the thought fades. Another thought comes and it too fades. Beneath them, what remains? Awareness. That steady presence that notices them all, but is not bound to any of them. That is you. When you rest in this awareness, life becomes a dance rather than a burden. You play your roles with joy, but you do not confuse the role with the actor. You walk through the world with lightness, knowing that every experience is fleeting, yet awareness is eternal. You no longer need to prove yourself endlessly, because you are not a fragile self in need of defense. You are awareness itself, vast, timeless, unbroken, and perhaps this is the greatest lesson of anesthesia, of near-death experiences, of meditation. They show us that the self can vanish, but awareness does not. They remind us that who we are is not limited to identity. They invite us to live not as the fragile self, but as the steady presence in which the self arises. So let this truth sink in. You are not the story. You are the space in which the story is told. You are not the mask. You are the presence behind the mask. You are not the wave. You are the ocean itself. And when you remember this, fear softens, love deepens, freedom blooms. Life is no longer something to be defended. It is something to be lived, fully, freely, fearlessly. The more I listened to stories of those who had touched death and returned, the more I realized how similar their experiences were to what I had felt in the stillness of sedation. Again and again, people spoke of a vast presence, of a peace that words could not capture, of an awareness that continued even when the body had failed. They spoke of it not as a dream, not as a fantasy, but as something more real than life itself. And I understood, because I too had touched that same presence. When every layer of self was stripped away, one man described it as a light beyond light. Another woman spoke of floating in an endless expanse, free from fear, free from pain, free from identity. The surgeon I met said that after months in a coma, what he remembered most vividly was not the confusion of dreams, but the clarity of presence. He called it non-local awareness, not bound to a body, not tied to time. Listening to him, I felt the same recognition rise in me. This is what remains when everything else falls away. And so I began to see death differently. Not as a terrifying end, not as a darkness to be feared, but as a revealing, a lifting of the final veil, a dissolving of the fragile self, leaving only the awareness that was always here. Perhaps what we call death is not the end of being, but the end of forgetting. Perhaps it is the moment we awaken fully into the truth of what we are. This does not mean life loses its meaning. In fact, it gives life deeper meaning. When you know that awareness is eternal, you can live without fear. You can love without clinging. You can savor each breath, each moment, each encounter, because you know it is fleeting against the backdrop of the infinite. Life becomes sacred, not because it is permanent, but because it is shimmering, fragile and precious within the eternal presence that holds it all. Meditation in many ways is a preparation for this. Not because it teaches you how to die, but because it teaches you how to let go. In meditation, you let go of thought, you let go of control, you let go of identity, and you rest in awareness. This is the same letting go that happens at death. The same quiet surrender, the same unveiling of presence. When you practice it now, in life, death becomes less of a stranger. It becomes a familiar doorway, one you have walked through countless times in silence. I believe this is why so many who meditate deeply lose their fear of death. They have already tasted what lies beyond the self. They have already seen that awareness is untouched by the coming and going of thought, of memory, of body. And once you have seen this, you cannot return fully to the old way of living, clinging desperately to identity, fearing every loss, grasping at every passing joy. You live lighter, you live freer, you live awake. Think of the freedom this brings. Imagine walking into your final days, not with dread, but with peace. Imagine holding the hand of a loved one as they take their last breath, not only with sorrow, but with the deep knowing that their essence is not gone, that awareness does not die. Imagine living each day now, not as if you are racing against time, but as if you are resting in eternity. This is the shift that recognition brings, and yet you do not need to wait for death to taste it. You do not need to wait for crisis, for sedation, for near-death experiences. You can taste it here, now, in this moment. All it takes is pausing. All it takes is noticing. All it takes is resting in the awareness that is already here. When you close your eyes and feel the breath move in and out, when you listen to the silence beneath sound, when you notice the space in which thoughts arise and dissolve, you are touching eternity. You are touching the same awareness that remains at death. You are tasting the freedom that cannot be taken. This is the true gift. To know that you are more than the self, more than the body, more than the story. To know that awareness is what you are. And awareness does not vanish. It does not age. It does not suffer. It does not die. It simply is. Eternal, timeless, unbroken. So let this recognition enter your heart. Let it shape the way you live. Let it soften your fears. Let it deepen your love. Let it awaken your presence. Because in the end, the question is not what happens after death, but whether you can see now what is already here. And if you can, then death is no longer the enemy. It is only another doorway into the same awareness you have always been. If these reflections have opened something inside you, if they have reminded you that you are more than your story, more than your body, more than the fragile self you defend each day, then I invite you to carry this truth forward, to not leave it here. In this video, take it with you, into your breath, into your conversations, into the quiet moments of your life. Let every pause, every silence become a reminder that awareness is who you are. If you feel this message could ease the fear of someone you know, share it with them, a loved one, a friend, someone searching for peace. Sometimes a single reminder that awareness does not vanish is enough to soften the weight of fear. And if you wish to keep walking this path with me, I invite you to subscribe so that you can join me for future meditations, reflections, and stories that point us back to presence. Together we can create a space where silence is not empty but full of truth, where life and death are not opposites but part of the same eternal